Some 13 years ago when I went into the ministry, one of the very first things I did as a young college student, I signed up to be a student summer missionary with the Home Mission Board. I signed up to be a student summer missionary with the Home Mission Board. I was going to give 10 weeks of my life to go anywhere the Home Mission Board wanted me to go and work with any church and do anything that they wanted me to do. And so I signed up and I went. And they sent me to some place nobody's ever heard of in North Dakota. I don't even think the people that lived there really knew where they were. But we were there in North Dakota, and I don't know the way they do things now, but the way they used to do things back then, they teamed student missionaries up in twos. And every missionary had a partner. They didn't just send you to a church by yourself. They sent you with a partner. So I got a partner, and his name is Jim. I'm going to tell you a story about my buddy Jim. If my buddy Jim ever heard me preach this sermon, he'd probably never be my friend again, but I'm going to tell you a story about Jim. When we got to North Dakota, the first thing that they do when you get there is they bring all of the state missionaries together, all of the other students who are in the state, and they bring us all together for 3 days of training. It's kind of like missionary boot camp is what it is. They just send you to station after station after station. They make you learn all this information. They just inundate you with things, and hopefully by the end of 3 weeks, or 3 days, you're supposed to be able to know everything you need to know to go out and spend those 10 weeks somewhere. But one of the things that they taught us and I still think of it this way, but one of the things they taught us at Missionary Boot Camp was they sent us to a class called Door-to-Door Survey. And what Door-to-Door Survey is they taught us how to actually go up to a door and knock on a stranger's door and introduce ourselves as ministers of Jesus Christ and either invite them to a church activity or witness to them right there at the front door. They taught us how to do what they call door-to-door survey. And one of the things that they taught us at door-to-door survey was this. When you walk up to a door, a stranger's door, you walk right up to that door, you knock on that door with all your might, and then after you've knocked on that door good and hard, you take one big step back. And so you walk up to the door, you knock, 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 and then you take a big step back. Why do you take the big step back? So when the person opens the door, you're not standing right next to their face. And so you can extend the hand and you can have a comfortable kind of greeting. This is just kind of a very quick version of what we did. But they taught us how to do this door-to-door survey. And we remembered this. And me and Jim, we were young, we were excited, we were young men in college. We were the cockiest people you probably ever met. We thought we could do anything. Invincible. That's who we were. And we were Christians, no less. Ministers, surrendered to the gospel, to share the gospel. We really thought, when they sent us to our church in nowhere, North Dakota, that we were just going to save everybody in town. That everybody in town, there's a big revival was going to break out, and all 25 people in town were going to get saved. We just knew it. There was going to be a massive explosion of Jesus Christ just all over the place. That's how cocky and confident we were. So we got there, and the preacher that we had come to work with, he put us to the test right away. The very first day that we were there, he said, "Boys, come here." He said, "You see that group of houses over there?" We said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I want you to go to every house in that neighborhood, knock on every single door, and introduce yourselves as the new missionaries of First Baptist Church, and invite them to Sunday school." Well, we said, "Well, that sounds easy enough." So we said, "Pastor, we'll do it." And we walked out of the house and we were strutting our stuff, just big, bad, and confident, you know what I mean? We just knew that we could do it. We got to the house, to the very first house, and we stood in front of the house. Big, strong, tough guys. And I looked at Jim and I said, "You go first." And Jim looked back at me and he said, "You go first." And so we went rock, scissors, paper. And of course he had rock and I had paper. I covered his rock. I won. Jim had to go first. So there we are at the base of the house. Now this house was an interesting type of house because it sat on a little bit of a hill. Probably 6 or 7 foot of a little mound is what it was. And this house sat on top of a mound. Well, Jim walked up the little bit of hill, and he walked up the stairs, and the staircase was probably like this, rather high. And on the porch, all it was just a big slab of concrete. There were no side railings or anything of that nature. So he walked up the hill, he walked up the stairs, he got right up to the door, and just as confident as he could be, he said, I said, Jim, go ahead and knock on the door. He said, okay, I will. And he knocked on the door just as hard as he could. And he froze. He just stood there. But nothing happened. So I said, Jim, knock on the door again. So he said, okay. Well, we were tough, you know. And knocked on that door. And he froze. But this time, we heard somebody walking to the doorway. And then we heard a voice that said, hold on, I'll be right there. And so Jim is still standing there, and he's only about 3 inches away from the door. It's right in front of him. And you remember, we went to missionary boot camp. They taught us how to do this. And I'm standing down at the bottom of the mountain, and I says, Jim, you got to take that big step back. Don't forget. And so Jim is standing there at the door. And we hear the doorknob begin to wobble. Somebody's opening the locks. And so it finally sinks in and it clicks. You can see that little light bulb pop up over Jim's head. And he remembers he's got to take that big step back. But remember, this is about as nervous as this guy has ever been. And he takes this big step, but it's not back. He's so nervous, he has lost his sense of balance, and he takes a big step sideways. Now remember, this is just a big slab of concrete, and there are no railings on the side of the porch. So as Jim takes this big step sideways, he falls completely off the porch. At exactly the same time, the door came open and a little woman looked out. And you know what she saw? She saw a little Indian man rolling down the hill. And I want to share with you one of the greatest and most precious examples of Christian ministry I've ever seen. Jim's rolling down the hill. Remember, it's a hill. He didn't just fall off the porch and hit the ground. That brother rolled. I did what any good partner would do. I did what any good brother in Christ would do. I turned my back before I laughed at him. But I wasn't the only one. The lady closed the door and went in another room before she laughed. And you could hear her too. It was great. But here's what the story's all about. As Jim rolled to the bottom of the hill, you talk about humiliating. You talk about embarrassing. That man got up, took a big breath, and he dusted himself off. And he walked right back up that hill. And he walked right back up those stairs. And he knocked on that door. And he took a big step back. And when the lady opened the door the second time, he stuck his hand out. And he said, "Hi, my name is Jim. I'm from First Baptist Church, and I'd like to tell you about Jesus."